This would kind of be like a well-endowed woman wearing a see-through top walking into a store and being asked to please put some more appropriate clothing on and then claiming that the store is anti-woman.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Don't go waving around your big old guns.
Faith, firearms, and freedom. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi, folks. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 206. And we are joined once again by our good friend, John Bennett, the pastor at St. John Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. Pastor, welcome back.
Thanks, Lloyd.
How are you feeling, by the way?
Sore, but doing all right, thanks to Vicodin.
This and the last few episodes brought to you by Vicodin.
No, right now, the biggest thing is the muscle pain because I got to the point where I can put weight on it now. And since I have muscles that aren't used to bearing weight for the last, 4 weeks, yeah. So I'm a little sore. I have to have my cocktail of Vicodin, Flexerol, and whiskey at night so I can get a good night's sleep.
It doesn't sound like a bad thing.
No, it's actually Saturday night, so that'll be a week ago from when this gets released. I did not get hardly any sleep that night because my legs just ached all night and I could not get comfortable. So after that, I said, "The heck with this." I'm just
It's cocktail time.
Yes. Don't worry, I'm only taking one Vicodin and one Flexerol.
Oh my goodness. Well, today we changed gears at the last minute. I had another topic in mind, and then something came up. My wife shared an article on the Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio Facebook group, and I thought this would be a really interesting topic for us to tackle. Modern liberalism has brought us so many wonderful things, cancel culture being one of them. Using the threat of boycott to force businesses to bend to their will. We've seen this with the NFL, with airlines, with restaurants like Chick-fil-A and stores like Hobby Lobby. And the gun control movement has made this tactic a staple, as we know, with Home Depot and Target and Walmart and Starbucks, just to name a few. But this is not a tactic that is exclusive to the left, and pro-gun groups have at various times called for boycotts of companies that supposedly oppose the Second Amendment. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at this tactic and kind of give you some tips for how to analyze the kinds of claims that you may see, and how we as Christian gun owners should think about the boycott movement and approach this particular issue. But before we get started, I do want to thank the members of the Reformation Gun Club for making another season of Armed Lutheran Radio possible. This show is listener-funded, and that means we've got no sponsors, so we rely on the support of awesome people like Paul Metzger and Kathy Patton and many others whose monthly support means that we can keep doing what we're doing. And I hope you'll consider joining them. For as little as $1 a month, you get access to hundreds of hours of exclusive content, some really cool swag, and the satisfaction of knowing that you help make all this possible. So go to armedlutheran.us/gun club for all the details, or click on Reformation Gun Club in the main menu of the website, armedlutheran.us, for all the details, and kind of get an idea of all the content that's available. Hope you'll join us. Today we're talking, as I mentioned, about cancel culture, especially when it pertains to gun rights. Like I said, my wife shared this article on our Facebook group, and I thought this would be an interesting topic for discussion for today's show. The story that she shared is a little over a year old, but it seems to be fairly up to date with regards to the companies listed. It's written by Teresa Mull, who is the editor at gunpowdermagazine.com, and it's entitled Avoid Supporting These Companies If You Value Your Gun Rights. And she prefaces this article, the beginning, it's with this paragraph. Corporate gun control is a very real danger. David French, writing recently in National Review, declared it a, quote, threat that can choke off financing for the gun industry, stifle speech about guns, and lock the gun rights community into offline and small online ghettos that restrict their ability to communicate. GPM, I guess that's Gunpowder Magazine, with the help of other pro-gun groups, has compiled a list of anti-gun businesses those who value their Second Amendment rights should boycott. So there's two things, I think, ways to think about this. Let's start with the 8th Commandment. You shall not bear false testimony against your neighbor. Pastor, give us a primer quick on what the 8th Commandment really means.
The 8th Commandment is about protecting the reputation of others. It's not just about not telling lies about others, but in the explanation to the 8th Commandment, Luther includes protecting the reputation of your neighbor. Now, if your neighbor is a terrible SOB, whether it's your physical neighbor or if it's a corporation, their reputation will stand on its own. But we do not need to be in the business of intentionally going after, trashing, running down the reputation of other individuals. It's not what we are called as Christians to do. We are called as Christians to speak the truth and love in some of these issues, especially when it comes to quote unquote boycotting these quote unquote anti-Second Amendment corporations.
Well, there's also the issue that really struck me was when you lump companies together as enemies of your Second Amendment rights without really digging into why you're making these claims. And that's what I wanted to get into here was I think sometimes those claims can be a little misleading, and for average Americans as consumers of news and opinion, it's easy to just see something and go, "Oh my goodness, they are against my Second Amendment rights. They're working to destroy my Second Amendment rights." When what we need is a little bit of discernment, and this is where the 8th Commandment comes in. It's incumbent upon us to not blindly accept everything that we hear and read in the news, and repeat or spread those stories without a little more discernment, a little more understanding of the truth, and getting down to actual sources instead of taking people's word for it. So, and then there's another principle that I think is important, and that is in considering one of the things that we talk about with the 8th Commandment is when instead of slandering your neighbor or speaking ill of your neighbor, that we should try to put the best construction on everything. You've heard us, the pastor and I, talk about this quite a bit, or mention it offhandedly from time to time on the show. What we're talking about here is looking for, instead of always assuming the worst, we should look for the best explanation. And that brings us to the principle of Occam's razor, and that is that the idea that the most likely explanation is usually the least complex. Right? So the most obvious explanation is probably the correct one, and it may not necessarily be some nefarious plot by the company in question to undermine your rights. What I thought I'd lead off with are the examples of the companies that are obvious and clear-cut, because there are definitely, this list does include companies like you were talking about who are actively campaigning to undermine our rights. And then there are others where the explanations are probably nuanced.
Right.
So you've got Bank of America, which said it would stop financing manufacturers that make military-inspired firearms like the AR-15. You have Buffalo Wild Wings, which announced a blanket no-gun policy, so all of Buffalo Wild Wings restaurants are gun-free zones, quote unquote. You've got Citibank that told its retail business partners that they should prohibit the sale of firearms to customers younger than 21 that haven't passed background checks. That's
last time I checked, if you're purchasing a firearm through retail process, you always have to pass a background check.
Right, exactly. But here you have a credit card processor who is actively out, pushing their business partners to change their policies on guns. And you've got Dick's Sporting Goods, we all know very well, with their halting of sales of assault style weapons, as they called them. And
they even destroyed the ones that they had in stock.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then and their stock plummeted. The value of their company lost millions.
Yep. Then you've got Seattle-based REI, which said they were going to halt orders of certain brands like Camelback water carriers and Camp Chef stoves because those companies' parent companies also make assault-style rifles. And then you've got Levi Strauss. We all know what they're doing. They're donating millions to Michael Bloomberg, and they're actually paying interns to go out and protest against gun rights. You've got Tom Shoes announcing it's going to spend $5 million to advance universal background checks, and Waffle House announcing that all of their stores are gun-free zones. So these are clear-cut examples. There's the best explanation. There's no better explanation for why they're doing it. There's no best construction. These companies oppose your Second Amendment rights. They've stated it clearly. It's in their policies. They donate to anti-gun groups. They're proudly announcing their support for gun control. So that's different. This group is clear cut. Where we get into trouble is with some of these others on this list that are being lumped in as companies that oppose your Second Amendment rights, and where they're suggesting that if you spend money or you do business with these companies, that you're endangering your gun rights. So let's look at some of these more complicated examples.
Sure.
Amazon Web Services. Now, Amazon restricted user access to codeisfreespeech.com, where users could access blueprints for making guns with a 3D printer. So the knee-jerk reaction is just to lump AWS in with all the anti-gun groups or companies that we mentioned before. But is that the best construction that we can put on this?
No. If you look at the link that's provided in that, this is one of those things that falls into just this massive gray area, because what they were doing, they had a ebook that they were trying to sell, and it was hosted on Amazon servers. In case you've forgotten, there was just this huge outrage not that long ago about these designs where you could 3D print your own gun. The thing is that it was just proof of concept more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who tries to use a 3D printer, which uses a polymer type of substance to create things, and uses that to contain the blast of a centerfire cartridge, you're just begging to be on the Darwin Awards at that point.
Yep. But the whole idea was that the whole claim was that AWS is squashing free speech by not allowing this book to be sold and hosted on their servers. But the best construction is really that this is, and I think this is a theme that we'll see in a lot of these, is a corporate aversion to liability.
Right. They don't want to be complicit in providing something that a person can then use that information that could lead to them personally injuring themselves out of their blanket stupidity.
Yes.
If anyone wants to take those And those 3D plans, you can get them just about anywhere on the internet now.
Mhm.
If anyone wants to experiment with a 3D printed gun, um, I hope that you'll quickly become accustomed to using a prosthetic, because you're likely going to lose your arm in the process.
Yeah, let's say somebody buys this book, they download it off of AWS, they go out and they make one of these stupid guns that then ends up blowing their arm off or killing themselves, and AWS then ends up being sued because they hosted that content on their servers.
Right. And in cases of lawsuits, whenever there's anything like this, slip and fall type lawyers, they're always going to go after the person who's got the biggest pockets.
Yes. And Jeff Bezos's pockets are bigger than anybody else's on the planet.
Right.
And so this has, to me, I think the best construction here, and probably the Occam's razor explanation is this has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. This is pure and simple self-preservation for AWS.
Right. So, and just in case you're wondering whether or not this is evidence of Amazon's anti-Second Amendment bias, if you do a Amazon search for how to build a gun, they have numerous books on sale within their store, even some that are Amazon Prime, so they're shipped and sold by Amazon, of how to build various different guns. They've got one for building a semi-automatic pistol, one for building your own AK, one for building an AR.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's pretty clear that Amazon, at this point, even though the corporation may or may not have a left bias in this is absolutely no reason to be boycotting Amazon or their AWS web service.
All right, let's look at this next one. And this one, I think, is a little bit, and there are several like this that are, I think, a little nefarious in terms of the way these are portrayed. FedEx ended a discount that it offered NRA members when they're shipping firearms, supposedly after a group called Gays Against Guns staged a protest. Now, ignoring the fact that the acronym for Gays Against Guns is GAG, let's look at... Sorry, I couldn't pass that up. Let's look at this more closely. Has anyone ever heard of... First off, have you ever heard of Gays Against Guns?
Nope, I haven't. Not until now.
They claimed victory after the announcement by FedEx, according to a news story, and FedEx said in a statement that the decision had nothing to do with GAG. They said that it was a lack of shipping volume that was the problem. It just didn't make sense economically for them to continue the program. So do you really think that FedEx would scrap a profitable program, let's say it was profitable, just because of a little-known group that had protested for something like 24 hours?
I'm guessing not.
Probably not. So
they're about making money.
Yeah, exactly. So the most likely explanation here is that this program simply did not make sense for them economically, and to boot, they could distance themselves from the NRA, which, as we all know, is steeped in a lot of corruption right now and does not have exactly the best public image.
Well, and for every leftist group, they are the proverbial boogeyman. But what's ironic is that in this article, it lists this as the reason to more or less boycott FedEx. Wouldn't the fact that every FedEx facility is considered a gun-free zone, wouldn't that be more of a reason?
To put them on the... Yes, exactly.
You would think so.
Right.
The same is true of UPS.
Yep. These companies, FedEx, UPS, are gun-free zones. They don't allow their drivers or their employees to carry on their premises. And yet the reason that we should be worried about FedEx is because they canceled a program with the NRA.
Yes.
So to me, that's a little disingenuous. And that leads into the next group, which is Avis and Budget Car Rentals and Enterprise Car Rentals and Hertz and Wyndham Hotel Groups and a bunch of others who canceled their rewards programs that they had with the NRA. And this is somehow considered to be a sign that they are anti-gun and that if you do business with them, you're endangering your Second Amendment rights. Well,
Right.
what's the better construction on that?
Maybe they just don't like the NRA.
It could be they just don't like the NRA. They don't want to be associated with that brand at the moment.
If you think back to when it was very popular to be anti-NRA, this was shortly after the Parkland shooting. You had all these companies come out and say that we are not going to be in partnership with the NRA anymore, and it was kind of a big deal. Uh, I think a lot of these companies just did this because they thought that it gained them some clout with these advocacy groups. Hey, maybe if we, show that we are joining with them and being against the NRA, that maybe they'll just leave us alone. Because guess what? FedEx and the and UPS, as well as the Postal Service, all three companies still ship firearms.
Right.
And so you would think that if they were anti-gun, they would refuse to do business with anyone shipping a firearm, but that's not the case.
That's exactly right. And it makes more sense, again, Occam's razor here, that they would be canceling programs that, like I remember reading that one of these programs, and I don't remember which one it was, it might have been the Yeti promotional program that they had going on with the NRA. Remember when everybody was blowing up their Yeti coolers? And it turned out that the reason that they didn't actually cancel, they just didn't renew their contract. Their contract expired and they just didn't renew. So immediately,
I'm going to blow up this $200 cooler that I just purchased.
How stupid does that look?
My gosh. That's like people burning their Nikes after they already paid for them because Nike contracted Colin Kaepernick.
Exactly.
It's like, no, it just means if you really feel that strong about it, just don't buy any more Nikes.
Yes. So it seems to me more likely that these companies took advantage of the opportunity not to continue programs with the NRA at a point where the NRA is kind of persona non grata in the wake of mass shootings and with all the corruption going on at the NRA. And they just figured, okay, I can kill two birds with one stone. I can get rid of this program that's not making me any money and maybe in some cases costing me money. And I can distance myself from the NRA and look like I'm doing something positive for gun safety. It's sort of a virtue signaling and on the one end and a cost cutting at the other.
Right.
And like you said, if they really were anti-gun, why would they continue to ship guns?
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
So again,
exactly.
Occam's razor, the answer that is probably the correct one is really more likely the simpler one instead of some nefarious plot to undermine the Second Amendment.
Yeah. I'm surprised that this article didn't mention the Illuminati. It's,
All right, so let's look at a more complicated example, and these are Target and Starbucks and Chipotle. Now, Target issued a statement in 2014 saying that bringing firearms to Target creates an environment that is at odds with the family-friendly shopping and work experience we strive to create. Starting today, we will respectfully request that guests not bring their firearms to Target. Starbucks published, remember, their CEO published an open letter asking patrons not to bring their firearms to their stores. And Chipotle in 2014 asked their customers not to bring guns into their restaurants because, quote, the display of firearms in our restaurants has now created an environment that is potentially intimidating or uncomfortable for many of our customers. So
yes.
What's the best construction on this? Is it that they hate guns and they are opposed to the Second Amendment, or is there something else going on here?
In the case of Starbucks and of Chipotle, I hate to say this because it could possibly offend some people, but this is the fault of stupid Texans. But back when there was this push for back when there was this big push for constitutional carry in Texas, you had all these idiots walking around in Starbucks and Chipotle and all these other places with their AR-15s, hashtag you're not helping.
Right?
What do you expect these businesses to do? And in the case of Target, it's even worse because I don't remember the exact timing. I don't remember exactly where it happened, but I do remember the details that somebody found a loaded firearm that some retard had left on a shelf in Target.
Yep.
What do you expect Target to do in this circumstance?
Yes. Yeah.
So
And,
this isn't a sign of anti-Second Amendment bias. It's just a reaction to stupid people.
yes, this is a response. This is a direct response to the open carry movement.
Yes.
Those companies don't want you scaring their customers. Period. And what did we do? What did people in the pro gun community do? They decided they're going to have a thank you Starbucks day and go pose with their rifles in Starbucks.
Yeah.
It's freaking stupid. It's the dumbest thing that we could possibly do. And yet we're told that they are working. They're the ones out there working to move our rights forward.
Right.
All you're doing is scaring people into thinking that all gun people are like you, and we're not.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
And the other difference here is that unlike Waffle House and unlike Buffalo Wild Wings that we mentioned earlier, these companies asked their customers not to bring their firearms. They didn't actually change their policies. And what's funny is, remember, the gun control movement claimed victory after this. After each of these announcements, they came out and said, we have successfully gotten these companies to change their policies and ban guns in their stores. And they didn't. They never changed their policies.
I hope we didn't lose any listeners over this, but I think our audience in general is more intelligent than to be, walking into their local Target or Starbucks with an AR-15.
Yes. Yes, I would hope so. Look, they're in business to sell products. They're in business to keep their customers happy. And you waving your shotgun or your rifle in their face is not making them happy. And so that's where this comes from.
Right.
But at the same time, they didn't go out of their way to change their policies. So claiming that these companies are anti-gun is just as disingenuous as the gun control people coming out and say and claiming victory in the aftermath, saying, "Look, we forced them to change their policies," when they didn't.
This would kind of be like a well-endowed woman wearing a see-through top walking into a store and being asked to please put some more appropriate clothing on and then claiming that the store is anti-woman.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Don't go waving around your big old guns in front of the kids. Yep, exactly. All right, so these final examples, there's a couple of additional examples I wanted to address as well. And these are a little more, these I think are the most intriguing. So you get Kroger, which owns Fred Meyer stores, which announced that they're no longer going to sell firearms to people under 21. You've got LL Bean announcing they're no longer going to sell guns and ammo to people under 21. I had no idea.
I thought they just sold clothing.
I started to say, I had no idea that LL Bean sold guns.
They come, with a color scheme that matches their turtlenecks or something. Who knows?
Exactly. A gun and a matching turtleneck. And then, of course, Walmart raising the age for purchase of firearms and ammunition from 18 to 21. And removing online items resembling assault-style rifles. Now, so is this hostility to the Second Amendment, or is this virtue signaling?
I fall more on the side of virtue signaling with this, especially with Walmart. Walmart did that after there was a mass shooting by a guy with an AK-47 in a Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
Walmart, they took some heat from the anti-Second Amendment advocacy crowd because, you're not harsh enough on guns and you sell guns and ammunition, therefore you brought this on yourself. I used to think more harshly towards those companies that say, well, we're only going to sell to people that are 21 or older. but I don't feel as negatively toward that now because these companies still sell guns and ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
And B, if you're under the age of 21, there's plenty of other places that will take your business.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it would be different if they say we are banning the sale of all of these things because we advocate for gun control and can no longer contribute to this. But that's not what they did.
If they decided to be dicks, it would be different.
Yes.
You know, I think including these people, I think these policies of raising the age to 21, it's a little bit of ignorance on their part on the issue because you know, raising the age really, you can't prove to me or anyone else that doing that is going to make any kind of difference in terms of gun violence, so called. But it's virtue signaling because now they're doing something that really isn't going to affect them much. But it makes it look like they're taking a stand, but they're not really. But at the bottom line, you've got to remember they're in the business to make money, not to take stands in the political arena. These policies are just minimal little changes because they probably don't make a ton of money on selling guns anyway at Kroger or at LL Bean.
Right.
So,
or even Walmart for that matter.
Or even Walmart.
I shop at Walmart all the time. I have yet, in all the times I've been to Walmart, see anyone at their gun counter purchasing a firearm. Never.
No, I've never
I
bought.
personally have purchased plenty of ammunition there because it's cheap ammunition.
Yeah.
But never have I seen anyone purchasing a firearm. So I don't think they're losing a whole lot of business on this. The second thing is that Walmart, they changed their policy within the store. They didn't say we're gun-free zone. They said, please don't open carry.
Right. And they did, and like I said, they didn't go the dicks route and ban guns completely. Once you hit 21, they're happy to sell you all the guns and ammo they can sell. So this is, I think, the best construction on this is it's ill-informed or ignorant policy, but it's trying to seem sensible without being really, you know, taking a hard stand.
Right.
Is it nefarious? No. Is it stupid? Yeah, it doesn't really make sense because it's not going to make any difference. But it's, you know, I think.
If you take a look at this another way, I wouldn't even say it's stupid. I would say it's smart because it doesn't change a dang thing, but it appeases those who are going to give them heat because they're quote unquote not doing anything.
Right. Yeah.
And I doubt this changed their bottom line. I mean, if it changed their gross or their net profits by a fraction of a percent.
Yeah. What percentage of 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds are buying ammo at Walmart and LL Bean?
Yeah.
I'm guessing not very many. And like you said, so it's not really affecting their bottom line to say, well, we're just not going to sell ammo to 19-year-olds anymore. Well, you know, nothing from nothing is nothing, you know, and you're making a statement and making yourself look good and hopefully keeping the barbarians at the door for another, you know, few months. So it's stupid from the terms. I guess what I meant by stupid is that it's stupid in terms of the effectiveness of the policy in terms of how it affects violence. But yeah, it's probably about as smart a policy as they could come up with to make themselves look good without really affecting their bottom line.
Right.
They're not willing to cut up all of their guns like Dick's did. They're gonna take a stand on people who are between 18 and 20, and really, how much is that affecting them? Probably next to none.
Right. Well, and you know what? I doubt any other companies are going to go the route of Dick's.
No.
Because Dick's is the perfect example of just what happens when you do this.
Flush $250 million down the toilet.
Yes. My goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's something that I want to think us to think about, and for all of our listeners to think about. We have this list of avoid supporting these companies if you value your gun rights. Is not shopping at any of these places somehow going to further our Second Amendment rights?
Right. Yeah,
And the answer is no. We're not benefiting the Second Amendment by not shopping at these places. So why stop shopping there?
with the exception of the ones that I would digress on
The
that.
ones that are nefarious towards, yes.
Yeah, the ones
Towards
like
the ones
Levi's that we
yeah.
know they're going to take that money and they're going to turn around and they're going to use it to lobby against our rights. Yes.
Yes.
But when you're talking about FedEx or you're talking about Walmart or you're talking about LL Bean or Chipotle or Starbucks, is it reasonable to assume that their policies are driven by a hatred toward the Second Amendment? I don't think that's reasonable. And
Right.
and like you said, if I don't spend $3 for a coffee at Starbucks, is it going to protect my Second Amendment rights? No, it's
No.
not. It's your prerogative, right? Do or don't do it. There's plenty of reasons not to use some of these companies. They mention Craigslist. I wouldn't go buy and sell on Craigslist because for all the obvious reasons, having nothing to do with gun rights. They're a haven for scammers and crooks. I'm not going to go buy $3 coffee at Starbucks because it's overpriced and pretentious. Same thing for LL Bean, like we just joked about. I'm not going to go eat at Chipotle, not because of because they asked people not to bring their guns, but because I hate their food and they love commies. So, and I didn't buy ammo or guns from Walmart before. So what I think the overriding point here is make up your own mind about who to do business with, and do your own research. When you see companies claiming that this or that company is anti-gun or pro-gun for that matter, don't just take it at their word. Do a little bit of research. Don't just follow the herd here and say, oh, the knee-jerk reaction and sign up for a boycott. So as we wrap this up, final thoughts before we go signing up for boycotts and claiming, or buying into every claim by a pro-gun or anti-gun news site, how should we react to the news, to these kinds of claims? How should we consume news as a Christian in light of the 8th Commandment?
Well, first ask yourself, is this putting the best construction on everything? For those of you who learned from the newer catechism, is this explaining everything in the kindest way? The second thing to keep in mind is so often when we see people respond to these kinds of claims from various outlets that, such and such company did this anti-gun thing, that if we use various social media platforms to speak about these things, are we speaking in a manner that is consistent with who we are as the children of God? Or are we just using mean, nasty, and profane language? Um, Oftentimes, because we are sinners, the response is to look at this and to speak very derogatively about the individuals that may or may not be involved in such things. Um, Keep your language in such a way that it is a faithful reflection of who you are as a Christian. And then ask yourself, um, is my action to either continue to do business with this company or to refrain from doing business with this company? Does this actually impact our Second Amendment rights one way or the other? If there is no net gain or loss, what's the point of ceasing to do business with that company?
Right. If it negatively impacts your life for no gain,
Right.
then
Right.
what's the point? So I guess that's the story. That's the message I hope our listeners get out of this today. Pastor, thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Hey, it always is fun, but yeah, I enjoyed doing this.
And folks, if you have any questions or comments about anything you heard here today, write us, go to our feedback page. Let us know that we're wrong, or let us know that you agree with us. Ask us questions, suggest future topics for us to discuss. Go to armedlutheran.us/feedback and leave us a voice message or a voicemail or an email. We would love to hear from you, negative, positive, or in between. We would love to hear from you and respond to you on the air or directly if you prefer. Thank you all for listening. Join us again next week for another episode. We'll have our variety show again next week with tips and pontifications from the entire cast. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
Got a question or a comment about something you heard on today's show? Visit our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback and leave us a voice message or send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.